In New Mexico, a university co-ed is missing. Police must piece together a web of evidence to catch those responsible if they ever hope to find her alive. In Virginia, a killer uses the interstate as his personal dumping ground. A woman's body is found, and investigators have little time and few clues to lead them to a killer who could strike again. Perpetrators try to conceal their crimes, yet savvy investigators can take the most obscure data and recreate a murder. Though killers treacherously lure their victims by gaining their confidence, forensic science brings to light crimes committed and the betrayal of a blind trust. In this episode, some of the names have been changed. The town of Las Cruces, New Mexico sits on the Rio Grande, just north of Mexico. A vast desert surrounds the town, the perfect place to conceal a crime.
Emergency operator.
In January 1998, 911 dispatch received a call about a missing student named Carly Martinez. The 18-year-old freshman was beginning her second semester. When campus police arrived at the dorm, her roommate and parents were waiting.
Are you guys here about Carly?
They said it was unlike Carly to be out of touch.
Our daughter's been missing.
Her father told police they hadn't seen Carly since the day before. He and his wife had taken both girls to dinner and then dropped them off at their dorm room about 6:30 p.m.
Welcome. I needed it.
No one had seen or heard from Carly since. University police began a missing persons investigation. Her parents and roommate gave police a description and photograph of Carly. An extremely attractive girl with long dark hair and dark eyes. She was 5'6" and was last seen wearing jeans and a brown jacket. Desperate to find her, they posted flyers around the campus, hoping someone would recognize Carly and contact police. A massive search effort began. Officers and volunteers on horseback combed the surrounding desert area. Police gave dogs a piece of her clothing, hoping the scent would lead them to her. And investigators knew time was running out. If Carly were lost or wandering in the desert, she would not survive for very long. 4 days passed before they got the first break in the case. A fellow student, Samuel Sanchez, saw the missing person posters and contacted police. He said he saw Carly with Jesse Avalos, one of his co-workers at an off-campus bookstore. According to Sanchez, he saw them at a local roller rink on the night she disappeared. Jesse and Carly were skating together and holding hands. Sanchez told police the couple was later joined by Jason Desnoyers, one of Jesse's friends. They looked as if they were having a good time. The Las Cruces Police Department was called in to assist the university in the investigation. David Cortez was the lead detective.
The co-worker said that they closed the roller rink early that evening of the 14th, and that he saw the three of them leaving together.
Campus police were the first to speak with Jesse Avalos.
Hello, how you doing?
They hoped he
Jesse
could
Avalos?
provide some answers.
How you doing? I'm Officer Costa with University Police, and I just wanted to ask you about your whereabouts and if you were hanging out with Carly Martinez the other night.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what
Avalos
happened?
said he was with Carly on a date and that his friend Jason Desnoyers had joined
We're
them.
up at the dorms. You know, we went out.
After skating, they had a few beers at a local bar.
He just asked to be dropped
He
off
told
at the
police
gate.
Carly asked to be dropped off at a gas station near campus to use a payphone. He said he hadn't seen Carly since. Detective Cortez found the story odd. He questioned why Carly would use the payphone at the gas station and not at her dorm. The detective now wanted to speak with Jesse's friend, Jason Desnoyers. Maybe he could provide more information.
Here already. You're taking, right?
Jason's story started out much like his friend's. He said Jesse Avalos was out on a date with Carly, and he met up with them at the skating rink.
Me and Jesse and his girlfriend.
But then Jason's story changed.
Decided to go out and have a couple drinks.
He said they did not drop her off at a gas station. He said they took her back to school.
So we drove her over to her dorm and dropped her off.
And where'd you guys drop her off at?
Detective Cortez grew suspicious. He knew one or both of the boys was lying.
Campus. As far as your story goes, is where because of the conflicting stories, we felt that something wasn't right.
Detective Cortez asked for permission to search Jason Desnoyers' truck, hoping to uncover something that would bring them closer to finding Carly. Police noticed some scratches on the car's exterior, on both the driver's and the passenger's side. They extended the entire length of the car. Other than that, the car appeared to be spotless.
We noticed that the inside of the truck was very clean, as if it had been recently washed.
Several fibers were collected from the floor and seat. Using the chemical luminol, they checked for blood and other bodily fluids. If there were any present, they would glow under the light.
Upon performing the luminol test, we discovered that the center bench seat area was lighting up. This caught our attention, along with the scratches, some indicators to us that something just wasn't right.
When investigators examined the seat more closely, they discovered a large reddish-brown stain. A portion of the seat cushion was cut out and sent to the forensic lab for testing. At the New Mexico State Crime Lab, forensic scientist Mark Salvo tested the truck seat for human blood.
They had removed the foam cushion of the seat, and on there you could see obvious staining on that. Did presumptive examination for the presence of blood on the material side, which was you couldn't see anything, and got positives on that, as well as on the foam where you could see a stain and got a positive indication that there might be blood present on those items.
The seat cushion tested positive for human blood, but the recent cleaning of the seat had destroyed any DNA. As the police gathered evidence, the search for the young girl continued. Carly's disappearance was reported throughout the southwestern states.
By short notice here.
Authorities hoped the media coverage would prompt someone with information to come forward.
Information that we just received. We got an updated photo on our victim, Carly. Just got that this morning from the family. And as the days followed, we had leads coming in, hundreds of leads. They were distributed to the task force and followed up on.
January 14th.
Investigators spoke to an informant who had recently been arrested on a parole violation. He was a neighbor of Jesse Avalos and claimed to have information regarding a jacket Jesse wore the night Carly disappeared.
why you're here.
The man said that Jason Desnoyers approached him several days after Carly went missing and asked for a favor.
This subject told us that he took the jacket from Jason and hid it under some rolled up carpet just outside the apartment.
Police searched behind the apartment building where the witness said the jacket was located.
There's some carpet right over here.
They found a roll of carpet where he said it would be.
Let me unravel it.
Inside was a military-style jacket.
Yeah.
It appeared to be stained with blood.
More stains on here.
The jacket was bagged and sent to the lab for further examination. After police obtained a warrant, they also searched inside Jesse Avalos' apartment.
Why don't you take the living room?
A team of forensic experts arrived and scoured each room. In the bathroom, investigators noticed reddish-colored stains they believed were blood. The shower curtain was collected for testing. In Jesse's bed, investigators found one long, dark hair. Some of Avalos' clothing was also bagged and sent to the lab. If the smudges found on the jacket and shower curtain were blood, forensic scientists would need to compare it to Carly's. Detective Cortez asked her family for personal items that might provide them with a DNA sample. Investigators were piecing together a case. They knew the longer it took, the hopes of ever finding the girl alive grew slim. They hoped the evidence would be the break they needed to lead them to the missing student. For 5 days, investigators in New Mexico searched for missing college student Carly Martinez. So far, the search yielded nothing. The two men last seen with the young woman claimed they went roller skating, had a few beers, and dropped her off.
No, we picked her up at the door.
But investigators didn't believe their story. Bloodstains found in the truck and on the shower curtain inside one of the suspect's apartments cast even more doubt.
Come on in here, you guys.
The police secured a warrant to collect DNA samples from Jason Desnoyers and Jesse Avalos.
This is Jason here, just need some body standards.
Desnoyers appeared with his lawyer. A technician took hair, blood, and saliva samples. Detective David Cortez supervised the procedure. He looked for any signs that indicated Desnoyers had been in a struggle.
One of the things I did notice at the time was that he had a large cut on his right hand, which was in the healing process. It was scabbing over, but it was, you can tell that it was very recent.
It's not on the search warrant now.
But just one
But
photo.
Desnoyers' lawyer refused to let police take photos of the cut.
We don't need a photo.
Body standards were also collected from Jesse Avalos. All of the samples were sent to the state crime lab to be compared to bloodstains found on both the jacket and shower curtain. Forensic scientist Mark Salvo conducted the examinations. First, Salvo extracted DNA from Carly's personal items to compare with samples found on the jacket. Then, he applied a chemical solution to the stains on Desnoyers' jacket.
Looks like there's some discoloration up here in this area. I'm going to do a presumptive test on it. In the presence of blood, I have a colorless solution that's going to turn into a dark pinkish color if blood is present.
The jacket tested positive for human blood. Salvo also swabbed the shower curtain found in Jesse's apartment. Using the same method, he learned there was blood on both sides of the shower curtain. These were collected and marked for evidence. Salvo then compared the blood found on the jacket and the shower curtain and was startled by the findings. The blood on these items came from 3 separate individuals. He discovered that the DNA matched not only both suspects, but also the victim.
I think it's just unusual in a case like that where you can link 3 individuals to a piece of evidence. So I can show that either all 3 of these individuals were injured and bleeding and left their material on this item, or that some of the individuals carried away DNA and left it on that item.
Police still didn't know if Carly was dead or alive. And they believed the only people who did know were their 2 suspects. Since Jason Desnoyers had cooperated in the beginning, Detective Cortez hoped he would talk now.
When we attempted to contact Jason Desnoyers, I learned through his attorney as well as his family that his whereabouts were unknown. So we moved over to Jesse Avalos. City Police, Jesse.
Cortez hoped with one suspect on the run, he'd get the other
Jesse, how
to
you
talk.
All right, how are you?
Not wanting to tip his hand, the detective played it cool and just asked Jesse for his help in the case.
Here by yourself?
Yes.
And we explained to him that we wanted to talk about Carly and if he would help us out, give us any information that he had or that he knew. One of the things we explained to Jesse was how the family was feeling, not knowing the whereabouts of their daughter.
It looked like his tactic was beginning to pay off.
With that, Jesse, out of the blue, told us, well, let's get in the car. Let's go for a ride. The terrain around Las Cruces is so isolated that if a person wanted to hide something out there or someone out there, they could very easily do it.
Jesse Avalos took Detective Cortez to a remote location in the desert. Jesse pointed out a site where Desnoyers had burned incriminating items. What Cortez found in the ashes was chilling. There were remnants of clothing and accessories, metal zippers and rivets, eyeglasses, and a woman's lipstick and compact case.
You remember?
One item was particularly telling.
The main thing that caught our attention was keys, which did not burn. They were keys which we knew was Carly's dorm room number. About 2.5 miles. Advise task force, like if you can contact me.
Jesse told Detective Cortez that Jason killed Carly and burned her personal items in an attempt to destroy the evidence.
This is his first statement that he really ties Jason as far as getting Carly and killing her.
Jesse tried to retrace Jason's steps on the night Carly was killed, but it was dark and they weren't able to locate the young woman.
You can contact me on my cell phone.
But even without a body, Detective Cortez knew they were close to breaking the case.
At least here we have Jesse talking to us, and at least we have a location to work with.
Detectives then had a difficult task. They called Carly's parents in to identify the items found at the burn site. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez confirmed the keys and the earrings were their daughters. And then Detective Cortez got an important call.
Get your hands up now! Now! Get them behind your head!
Hands up! Behind your head! Behind your head!
Step towards me!
Move away!
Keep walking! Lay down across the rail now! Get on the rail!
The early morning hours of March 17th, I get a call that Jason Desnoyers had been located just outside of San Diego, California. The deputy just happened to recognize Jason from one of the flyers of the mugshots. Just by luck that we were able to locate and arrest Jason.
Jason Desnoyers was transported back to Las Cruces and formally booked for the murder of Carly Martinez.
All right, just come on in. We're going right to your left.
Once Jason was in custody, they then arrested Jesse Avalos on tampering with evidence.
Take one cuff off.
Investigators knew that without a body, it would be more difficult, but not impossible, to convict them of murder.
It was very important to find this body. Not only to the family, which was a big concern for us, because we still needed to prosecute these subjects.
Police led an extensive search around the burn site. Hundreds of search personnel were on hand to attempt to locate the remains. Given the vastness of the desert, authorities knew the search could take weeks. And through it all, Detective Cortez continued to pit one suspect against the other, convinced it was only a matter of time before one of them broke down.
We decided that we would meet up with Jesse and tell him, hey, we located Jason. He's putting the blame on you now, Jesse. Jesse tells us, well, I'll tell you. I'll come up clean now and tell you where she is. I'll take you straight to her body. We told Jesse, okay, here's your last and final chance.
Started as a grid search, and we'll coordinate with us, the 3 canines, how we want to do it. Keep your radio on where we can communicate with you.
Jesse Avalos again showed detectives several areas where he thought the body was located. Even with the help of university police, border patrol agents, and search dogs, they found nothing. So Detective Cortez came up with one more strategy.
On our way out, we made sure that Jesse did see Jason and that this was no bluff.
All right, Jason, you're up. Good luck. Yeah, that's basically.
After seeing Jesse Avalos helping police, Jason Desnoyers now began accusing his friend of the murder. He claimed he could show police where Avalos had buried the body. Jason now led detectives to various locations, but Carly's body was not found. Frustrated, officials continued to search on their own. Finally, the rescue team made a gruesome discovery not far from the burn site.
We heard over our police radio that one of our civilian search and rescue horsemen had located what he believed was to be a body.
Cortez and his team of investigators quickly went to the scene. They confirmed that it was the body of a young female. After 67 days of investigation, police had finally found the missing college student.
When we got there, we knew it was Carly. Finally, we found her.
The body was exposed to the harsh desert elements for over 2 months and was badly decomposed. It was removed for autopsy. Police believed the forensic evidence gained at autopsy would not only reveal how she died, but also secure the conviction of her killers. The Las Cruces, New Mexico police had arrested Jason Desnoyers and Jesse Avalos in connection with the disappearance and murder of college freshman Carly Martinez. Over 2 months of investigation came to an end after police discovered Carly's body at a remote desert site. The body was transported to the coroner's office for autopsy. Medical investigator Patricia McFeely's first objective was to make a positive identification of the body. Dental records easily confirmed the victim was Carly Martinez. An initial assessment of the body revealed signs of sexual assault and 27 knife wounds.
Well, we were looking for the cause of death. In her, there were multiple areas of injury. She had stab wounds of the chest, and she had stab wounds of the head, and she had some blunt trauma also in the head area.
Dr. Vince Steffen, a specialist in skeletal biology and forensic anthropology, was asked to examine the wounds.
We've got a lot of injuries.
He was asked to determine the type of weapon used.
At the time, the decedent had been out in the desert for a couple months, so she was in an advanced state of decomposition. So looking at the outer wounds on the skin may not necessarily have given a good indication of what actually happened in those areas.
McFeely and Steffen ordered x-rays of the wounds. They discovered a tiny piece of metal embedded in the skull. It proved to be the tip of a knife.
Interesting. You can see the perforation.
Then they found evidence that another weapon was used.
Okay.
Okay. Then there was a second pattern of trauma that was consistent with some other type of object. It left a clear impression that it was not made by a knife.
Steffen and McFeely speculated that the other instrument matched the pattern of a set of needle-nosed pliers. Two weapons could mean two attackers, and any one of the wounds could have caused Carly's death.
It would suggest that either two people were doing something, or one person had one instrument for some reason, put that one down and picked up another.
Investigators knew the second scenario was unlikely. With this analysis and the other evidence, police reconstructed how the murder took place. That evening, after skating, Desnoyers and Avalos took Carly out into the desert to continue their drinking, and then raped her.
Desert.
We believe that when they got Carly with them in the truck, sitting in between them, they were in control. They figured they could have their way with her, which, consisted of raping her because of what they had done to her at that point, that they couldn't just let her go.
What are you doing?
They then killed her and left her body in a remote location, hoping she'd never be found.
Come here. What are you doing?
It was not the ending Detective Cortez had hoped for.
Here we had an 18-year-old college girl just starting her life away from home for the first time. And just saying, how this could happen to anyone's daughter, anyone's child.
Jesse Avalos was convicted of first-degree murder. He received a life sentence. Jason Desnoyers was also convicted and is currently serving a life sentence. Some killers prey on those they know, gaining their trust and making the crimes easier to commit. Others rely on the vulnerability of strangers in need. Virginia's highways offer scenic views of the surrounding countryside. But on the morning of January 23, 1995, along a remote stretch, a grisly discovery was made.
911, where's your emergency?
Shortly before dawn, 911 operators in Washington County received a call about a lifeless body near Interstate 81.
Central 835. Need you to respond to I-81 northbound, just before exit 10.
The responding officer found a half-dressed female lying in the middle of the road. The Washington County Crime Scene Unit processed the area. Crime techs photographed the site and canvassed for evidence.
That's more blood stains here.
Investigators were unable to identify the victim at the scene. They did not find a purse or any identification. Police also recovered a plastic grocery bag. It had been partially wrapped around the victim's head. More evidence was found close by. A pair of pants believed to be the victim's.
3 pieces of paper.
In the pocket was a slip of paper. On it was written 2 phone numbers, both out of state.
Gainesville on it, 304, I believe is Florida.
The pieces of evidence were bagged and sent to the state crime lab. Investigators also found another important piece of evidence. A set of bloody tire tracks. Detective Kenneth Wilson investigated the case.
There was some obvious tire tread marks that led from the lady's body out toward the northbound ramp of I-81 North and on down the ramp. It became obvious that the vehicle had run over the lady's legs.
Forensic technicians photographed the tracks. It was evident they were made by a very large truck. Detective Ross Sheets also worked the case.
Appeared to be the tracks left on the roadway when he ran over the victim's right leg, left marks that appeared to be that of a tractor and trailer. The diameter and the revolution of the tire led us to believe that in fact it was a tractor and trailer.
Pull back, and after a while it left.
Detectives canvassed the rural area to see if anyone had heard anything unusual. Police found one man who remembered hearing a truck around 3 a.m. He told police he heard the truck idling for several minutes. Then he heard it turn around and drive back onto the interstate. The man was a mechanic who worked on tractor trailers. He did not see the vehicle, but he was confident the engine was a Peterbilt motor. Thinking the trucker might still be in the area, police moved quickly. They advised way stations along the interstate that a possible murder suspect might be traveling northbound in a semi-truck with a Peterbilt motor.
We also notified the Virginia State Police, the West Virginia State Police, the Maryland State Police, and North Carolina State Police to also be on the lookout for any tractor and trailer that may have signs of blood or hair or human tissue on that vehicle.
At the way stations, attendants looked closely at each tractor trailer. The search turned up nothing unusual. The Washington County Coroner's Office conducted the autopsy of the body, officially noted as Jane Doe. The medical examiner determined the victim was between 40 and 50 years old. There were marks on her neck that indicated she was strangled. X-rays revealed the victim's neck was broken. The ME also suspected sexual assault, but no foreign DNA was recovered. The medical examiner concluded that due to the presence of insects and the level of decomposition, the victim had been dead for about 12 hours before she was left on the road. Forensic specialists took fingerprints and palm prints of the victim, hoping to identify her. Both sets of prints were run through several national databases. A match was located in Bloomington, Indiana. The victim was identified as 45-year-old Wanda Jean Turner. Police learned her prints were in the system due to a prior arrest on a trespassing charge. Authorities now needed to locate Wanda's family and notify them of her death. When they spoke to them, they also hoped to gather additional information about her background to aid the investigation.
She was known to hang out at various truck stops and would travel from various parts of the country just by means of riding with truckers.
But her family didn't give detectives much to go on. They had not seen or heard from her in months. With very little to guide them, investigators would have to trace Wanda's movements in the days and hours leading up to her death. They looked to the phone numbers found in her pocket. One of the numbers was a taxi cab company in Gainesville, Florida. Investigators contacted the Gainesville Police Department and asked for assistance. They hoped someone at the cab company would remember Wanda. Gainesville police showed photographs of Wanda to the cab drivers. One man recognized her. The cab driver told police he took her to the bus station around 11 a.m. on January 22nd. He remembered that she only carried a plastic grocery bag. But Wanda did not mention where she was headed.
We lost her trail then and everything went cold, but the last place we could place her alive was in Gainesville, Florida, getting on a bus.
Detective Sheets believed the victim's body was dumped in Virginia about 16 hours later. The investigation, expanded to 5 states, stretched the resources of the Washington County Sheriff's Office.
And we sent detectives out in different directions, going to every truck stop, basically from Roanoke, Virginia to Gainesville, Florida, distributing these posters and requesting any and all information.
They hoped someone had seen Wanda Turner with a truck driver. But no one remembered seeing her. And the case slowly grew cold. Then, less than a month after Wanda Turner's murder, a body of a woman was found off an interstate near Greensboro, North Carolina. The crime scenes were eerily similar. Once again, the victim was partially nude, and her body had been run over by a truck. If the same killer was responsible for both crimes, there could be more to come. Police knew they needed to work quickly before more women turned up dead. As Virginia detectives were piecing together the murder investigation of 45-year-old Wanda Jean Turner, another body was found in North Carolina. The newly discovered victim was found partially nude, abandoned near an interstate. Both crime scenes were similar, and investigators believed they were looking for one killer. The medical examiner determined this victim was strangled like the first. The victim's fingerprints were processed through the national database, and like the first victim, she too had a record for a minor offense. She was positively identified as Cindy Barkley from Georgia. Police tracked down Cindy's family. They said Cindy was living in Florida and didn't keep in constant contact. Although the last time she called, she said she was going to visit relatives in Maryland. That was about 2 months before. When she phoned, she was at a truck stop and said she was doing fine.
I'm gonna just be like, a couple weeks, and then I gotta go. I really, I gotta go. 13.
Since the phone calls home were so infrequent, no one reported her missing, and there were no more leads. Exactly 1 month later, in Kingsport, Tennessee, another woman was found dead off an interstate. She was discovered 30 miles from the first victim. To Detective Sheets, there was no doubt the murders were all related.
Crime scenes were similar. The girl seemed to be positioned on a roadway, and her clothes were pulled down.
The victim's prints were processed. She was identified as Tina Madsen. And like the previous 2 victims, Tina had been strangled. Police from 5 states organized a task force to compare evidence. By working together, they hoped to speed up the search, leading them to a suspect.
We have the address of the...
But so far, they had nothing.
We're going to go just as soon as we...
Although investigators believed the killer drove a truck with a Peterbilt engine, they had no idea who he was or how to find him.
Research the record.
Extremely difficult to identify a suspect in this case. There's a million or so truck drivers in this country and millions of trucks. And just like a long shot to find a suspect.
At the Virginia State Crime Lab in Roanoke, forensic scientists pored over the only physical evidence they had: a receipt, a piece of paper, and a plastic bag. Fingerprint specialist Andrew Johnson examined the evidence, but was unable to develop any prints on the receipt or piece of paper. He then looked at the plastic bag found wrapped around the victim's head.
Actually, a plastic bag is a surface very conducive for latent prints. It's rather slick, it's non-porous, and if the individual that touches it has perspiration or an oily substrate on their hand, will leave a very good latent print.
Johnson placed the bag in a sealed chamber. He then put cyanoacrylate, or superglue, in a small tin and set it inside a chamber to heat and release the vapors. The glue evaporates and adheres to the oily prints, which glow under an alternate light source. After 3 long months and just as many victims, Andrew Johnson made the discovery he believed would turn the case.
After photographing the latent print, I took the photograph and made a 5-time enlargement of the latent print. And then a tracing is done of the minutia on the latent print and transferred to a piece of acetate.
Investigators ran the prints through Virginia's fingerprint identification system. But to their surprise, the database didn't turn up anything.
Missouri, Alabama.
The fingerprints were their only link to the suspect. Police believed they were looking for a trucker, and now they needed to find another way to track him down.
Similar crime scenes have been observed.
Okay, we've developed a media release.
They made copies of the fingerprints taken from the plastic bag and submitted them to jurisdictions across the country.
People who can answer phone calls with this particular evidence we have. A lot of the...
And just when they were losing hope of ever finding the killer, their luck changed. Across the country, in Arkansas, investigators got a hit. A serial killer was on the loose. 3 murders were linked to the same perpetrator who traveled the interstates in search of unsuspecting women. The only clue connected to the crimes was a fingerprint found on a grocery bag. And after months of coming up empty, investigators finally got a match. The suspect had been arrested in Arkansas on a minor charge several years earlier. The print belonged to Sean Goble of Asheboro, North Carolina. Investigator Sheets of the Washington County, Virginia Sheriff's Office was optimistic that he was their killer.
He was a tractor and trailer truck driver, so we thought we had our man.
Hey, Charlie, listen, I've got some things I got to take care of. I'll get back with
Detective
you later
Kenneth
today.
Wilson went to North Carolina and questioned the suspect's supervisor. Goble was out on the road and was due back at any time. The supervisor confirmed that Goble not only drove a tractor trailer, he drove one with a Peterbilt engine. But Goble's co-workers could not believe he was a cold-blooded killer.
Goble was known throughout his department as a calm, easygoing friendly, but somewhat lonely truck driver, but he had a good reputation.
Investigators obtained the trucker's travel logs to see if there was any correlation between the location of the bodies and the suspect's whereabouts.
We determined that he was in the vicinity of a lot of murders that occurred across the country, especially the ones that we were looking at here locally.
When Goble showed up, detectives were there to meet him.
Police, come here.
He did not seem surprised. There was very little reaction from him. But once we told him he was under arrest and the charge he was being arrested for, he was somewhat surprised.
Goble denied any involvement in the murders.
Mr. Goble, as we told you before,
He told police he never met any of the victims.
I don't think I've seen her before.
While Goble was detained at the Winston-Salem Police Department, investigators processed his truck. Inside, they found a purse containing the driver's license of the last victim, Tina Madsen. They also collected numerous strands of hair. And they found what appeared to be blood. When detectives confronted Goble with the evidence found in his truck and on the plastic bag, he admitted he had picked up the women, but claimed they were alive when he dropped them off. Police then obtained a search warrant for his home. Inside his bedroom closet, they made a gruesome discovery. Police found purses, women's shoes and underwear, and other personal items. Investigators believed Goble was collecting souvenirs from each victim. With evidence mounting against him, Sean Goble ultimately confessed to the 3 murders.
there was a plastic bag. He looked at us for just a moment or two, and he conceded that it was him. His reaction from then on out was somewhat subtle. He was very cooperative. His response was really, I'm glad this is over, but I'd like to just get it behind me and get back out on the road.
But Detective Wilson knew he wasn't going anywhere.
Okay, Mr. Goble.
Goble told police what happened the night he picked up Wanda Turner. Near Virginia, Wanda asked the trucker for a ride.
Want a party?
He said he agreed and killed her. Then he put the plastic bag over her head to keep the blood from getting on the seats. The confession gave investigators more than they needed to bring the killer to justice.
We started the crime scene with 3 pieces of paper and 2 telephone numbers in a plastic bag. Like a million in one shot trying to locate this individual.
His confessions allowed Goble to avoid the death penalty. He received 3 consecutive life sentences. Killers can lure unwitting victims, blindly gaining their confidence and trust in order to commit murder. Yet forensics can reconstruct the details of their crimes and piece together the evidence needed to convict, exposing the perpetrator's lies and bringing them to justice.